Welcome back. So Robb Stark made it as number 1 in Season 3. That's now 2 Starks that have topped 2 lists. Let's see what happens in Season 4. At number 13 we have Lysa Arryn. This takes place in the Vale of Arryn, in the Eyrie, beyond the Bloody Gate, right after Lord Baelish marries Lysa Arryn. So, in the courtyard, Robb and Arryn destroys Sansa Stark's snow castle, so Sansa slaps him, and he runs away. Lord Baelish witnesses this, and he starts talking to Sansa, and at some point, he kisses her. Funnily enough, Lysa Arryn sees this, and walks away. Later on, Lysa Arryn organizes a situation where she's holding Sansa over the moon door. Lord Baelish comes over and calms the situation down. And then afterwards, he pushes Lysa out the moon door. There's so many things I want to say about this, but ultimately, Lysa Arryn is one of the dumbest characters in the series. At number 12, we have Joffrey. So obviously, this was going to make the list. Joffrey is a fucking idiot. All he does in King's Landing is make enemies. So it's no wonder he ends up being killed. It was just a matter of time. And it happened at his own wedding. I'm not sure why Joffrey acts the way he does. You'd think him being king he'd be a bit more tactical, but no. He just likes being an asshole. And he gets exactly what he deserves. At number 11, we have Bran Stark. So, you have wildlings fleeing the north and going south of the wall. Then you have characters like Bran going in the opposite direction. It sounds absolutely ridiculous and plain stupid. And look what happens. Bran and the group get captured by former Night's Watchman recruits at Craster's Keep. And what happens is Yara Greyjoy nearly gets raped by Karl Tanner. Hodor gets taunted and stabbed. Jojen Reed nearly dies because no one was able to help him when he had a seizure. I think the real mistake here is not so much that the group went north, but more the fact that they let themselves be captured. At number 10, we have Oberyn Martell. This takes place in King's Landing after Tyrion Lannister demands a trial by combat, and Oberyn Martell becomes his champion. Oberyn wants to avenge his sister, Elia, who was raped and killed by Gregor Clegane, the Mountain, and it was Tywin who gave him the order. So the fight begins, and it's not going badly or well for Oberyn. It's just okay. But at some point, Oberyn manages to fatally wound Gregor Clegane, and it looks like he dies. But Gregor ends up getting up and crushing Oberyn Martell's face. And obviously, Oberyn dies. Not only does Oberyn Martell die, but he doesn't get justice for Elia. And also, Tyrion gets sentenced to death. At number 9, we have Jojen Reed. This one follows on from the previous example, where Bran and the gang get captured at Craster's Keep. But this one is much worse. So the gang is nearly at the Three-Eyed Raven, but they get attacked by whites. And Yara Greyjoy tries to protect everyone. Let's just take a moment to mention that Yara Greyjoy is the only person in this group that can fight, which is absolutely ridiculous. Obviously, Bran can walk into Hodor, but that doesn't count. And then you have Summer, who is quite useful, but Summer's a wolf. Then you have Jojen Reed. Jojen Reed is the son of the renowned warrior Howland Reed. So you would have thought that Jojen, being the son of such a notable warrior, he would be a good fighter. But he isn't, which is absolutely ridiculous. And this is the exact reason why he gets killed. At number 8, we have Jorah Mormont. This is where Jorah Mormont gets dismissed from Daenerys' court. Going all the way back to Season 1, Jorah Mormont was sending reports of Daenerys to Lord Varys and the Small Council. It's just now he'd been found out for it. The reason why this is a big deal is because Jorah believed in Daenerys, and he wanted to fight for her. So not only does he lose his place in Daenerys' court, he loses his place as Daenerys' closest advisor. He also loses his place as one of her Queen's Guard. And he also loses his place as one of her generals. And to cap it off, he loses the chance to take King's Landing with her. At number 6, we have Yara Greyjoy. This example is one of the reasons people stopped watching early Game of Thrones because it makes no sense. So, I always thought that Game of Thrones was about making smart decisions, being tactical, and not taking too many risks. But this example does the opposite. So it makes me wonder how this example even made it into the show. So we know that Theon was being tortured by Ramsay, and he even has his manhood taken away. News of this gets back to the Iron Islands, so Yara decides to gather her 50 best ships and men and sail to the Dreadfort. There's 2 reasons why this is a terrible idea. For one, it'll take you about 3 to 4 weeks, if not more, to sail from the Iron Islands to the Dreadfort, which a lot of things could go wrong along the way. Number 2, what the fuck are you going to do once you get there? Do you have any siege weapons? How are you going to get inside the castle? And once you do, how do you plan to even get out safely? Anyway, so what happens is Yara ends up storming the castle. They scale the walls, climb over, and they somehow manage to locate Theon in the dog kennels. I'm not sure how, but it happens. Oh yeah, by the way, Theon doesn't want to go with Yara because he's too fucked up to do so. So she ends up leaving him. All Yara managed to accomplish in this is that she loses some of her ships, she loses some of her best men, and she didn't even get the person she was there to get. Ridiculous. At number 6, we have Karl Tanner. This just keeps getting more ridiculous because why the fuck would former Night's Watchman recruits stay at Crass's Keep? It makes no sense. Because to the north, you've got the Wildlings. To the south, you've got the Night's Watch. And on top of that, you have Wildlings roaming around. So if you stay in this location, you're completely fucked. And in the defense of these ex-Night's Watchman recruits, it's like, where the fuck are you gonna go? If you go north, you get killed by Wildlings. If you go south, you get executed by the Night's Watch. And if you try your luck in the Haunted Forest, you might get killed by a White. So, they've really got nowhere to go, but they really should have had a plan B when they killed Jorah Mormont. And that was Karl Tanner's fault. Oh, excuse me. It was Ra's fault. Gee, I can't even get these names right. Anyway, what ends up happening is that all these ex-Night's Watchman recruits end up getting killed by the Night's Watch. And Karl Tanner ends up having a one-on-one with Jon Snow, which technically he wins, but obviously one of Craster's ex-wives gets involved and Jon Snow ends up killing Karl Tanner. At number 5, we have Tyrion Lannister. This is where Tyrion Lannister is on trial for Joffrey's murder. And obviously Tyrion didn't commit the murder, but here we are. At some point during the trial, Jaime asked Tywin to let Tyrion live, and they make some sort of deal. So all Tyrion had to do was accept that he was guilty, and he would be sent to the wall. But obviously, he doesn't do this. He does something much worse. He demands a trial by combat, which is the dumbest thing he could have done, because what you have to understand is that there are only 2 people that Tyrion had that could have fought for him. One of them was Jaime Lannister, which he has one hand, so he can't fight. And number 2 was Bronn. But the thing about Bronn is that he was due to get married, so he wasn't going to risk his life in a fight. So really, Tyrion had no one that could fight for him. So at this point, he was completely fucked. And on top of that, the person that Cersei chose to fight for her was the Mountain. And it's like, good luck. Luckily, Oberyn Martell ends up wanting to fight for Tyrion, because obviously he wants to get revenge for his sister Elia. Oberyn Martell. But long story short, things don't work out too well. Oberyn ends up being killed by the Mountain, and Tyrion ends up being sentenced to death. Ridiculous. At number 4, we have Olenna Tyrell. I'm not sure why, but Olenna decides to work with both Lord Varys and Lord Baelish, which doesn't make any sense because it's like mixing fire and water. It doesn't go together well. Anyway, with Lord Varys, he plots with Olenna to try and get Sansa married to Loras so that they have control over the north. However, Lord Baelish finds out about this, and he makes sure the Lannisters know this as well. So Sansa ends up getting married to Tyrion, and that plan fails. With Lord Baelish, he plots with Olenna to try and get Joffrey assassinated, which they successfully do. But Sansa ends up leaving with Baelish and goes to the Vale. So all that ends up happening is that Olenna loses Sansa twice. Once to the Lannisters and once to Lord Baelish. Also, Lady Marjorie becomes a widow and she becomes the Queen Regent. And obviously, Loras doesn't get married to anyone. At number 3, we have Tywin Lannister. 14 years ago, Robert Baratheon rebelled against the Mad King. And during that time, Tywin Lannister betrayed that king and had Oberyn Martell and her children killed. This was a mistake because Oberyn Martell, the Prince of Dorne, has been plotting against the Lannisters for over 14 years. And you can imagine what he has in store for Tywin, which involves the destruction of the Lannisters. At number 2, we have Mance Rayder. This takes place at the Wall, where Mance Rayder and the Wildlings attack the Wall, more specifically at Castle Black, which never really made any sense because when you think about it, why the fuck would you attack the Wall at its strongest point? We know that Castle Black is the main stronghold along the Wall. Then you've got Eastwatch by the Sea and the Shadow Tower. So there's 3 strongholds along the Wall that are currently occupied, not to mention the other 16 that are empty. So the fact that you go for the strongest stronghold along the Wall is fucking ridiculous. And apparently the reason why they go for Castle Black instead of the other ones is because the Wildlings hate the Night's Watch so much that they want to wipe them out. So they target Castle Black from an ego standpoint, which is absolutely stupid. And look what happens. Mance Rayder and the Wildlings lose a lot of men. Not only that, they don't even get past the Wall. And just on that, I know that the Wildlings were smart enough to attack Castle Black from 2 sides. They did send some men from one side to attack, and then they attacked from the bottom side of the Wall. But obviously, they failed. And lastly, Mance Rayder ends up getting taken hostage by Stannis, which wasn't completely his fault because who could have predicted that? Stannis all of a sudden decides to go north and tries to play the role of Azor Ahai. At number 1, we have the Wise Masters. This takes place in Meereen. You would have thought that after Astapor and Yunkai fell, that Meereen would have been extra cautious to the threat of Dany. Because in Astapor, Dany makes a deal in bad faith and sacks the city. In Yunkai, she sends 3 warriors to take the city, which is completely unrealistic. Like, the whole thing doesn't make any sense. But the main point is 2 cities fell. So the third one should have been more than prepared to deal with that threat. But look what happens. The city gets taken by slaves. Because Dany smartly sent some of her men inside the city to turn the slaves against their masters. It's actually brilliant when you think about it, but it never should have been allowed to happen. And obviously, hundreds of masters get crucified.